Welcome back to the deep dive. We are here ready to give you that ultimate shortcut to being well-informed. We dive into the sources, pull out the knowledge you need, and really, level up your understanding. And today we're doing a linguistic deep dive, but not poetry analysis or anything like that.
No.
We're focusing right down on the nuts and bolts of everyday conversational English, those really small, common phrases that actually carry a huge amount of weight and nuance.
They really do. And if you miss the precision on these, well, your meaning can drift a bit. You can sound slightly off.
Right. It's not quite natural.
Exactly. And that's the mission today. It's tailored for you, the learner who wants that immediate practical knowledge. We've looked at some detailed sources, really focused on the subtle mechanics of how English works day to day.
Functional English.
Functional English, exactly. When you master these small structural tools, you really move beyond just memorizing words. You get into genuine fluency.
So we've pulled out 4 specific phrases. We think they're pillars of everyday chat, but they often get misused.
Yeah, often because the implied meaning, it's so much bigger than the literal words.
Okay, so which 4 are we tackling?
We're going to really deconstruct the proper usage, the grammar behind them, the social context for short for something, then the idea of practical skill in know-how. After that, the directional difference between say that and say to, and finally, that really tricky dual meaning of let someone go.
Wow, okay. A lot packed into those simple phrases.
Definitely.
And the goal isn't just defining them, right? It's about seeing the machinery.
Seeing the machinery is a great way to put it. The social and grammatical engine running underneath. Once you see how it works, you can use it perfectly. Every time.
Avoid the common mistakes by understanding the structure itself.
That's the idea.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We're starting with language that establishes identity, abbreviation, the rules of clarification, short for something. Right. This phrase is just everywhere, isn't it? If I say I'm Sam, but my full name is Samantha, I use it. If a company talks about an NDA, they have to explain it using this.
They do.
So the construction is always X is short for Y. My question is, why that structure? Adjective plus preposition for. Why can't a learner just say NDA means non-disclosure agreement? What's wrong with means?
That's a really good question. It gets right to the core of what this phrase actually does. When you use means, you're offering like a translation or maybe a definition.
Okay.
But when you use short for, you're doing something different. You're establishing a relationship, a foundational identity link. You're stating that X, the short form, is derived from Y, the long form.
Derived from, not just equals.
Exactly. You're confirming that the shortened term carries the exact same semantic weight as the longer one, at least in that context. It's a stand-in.
So derivation, not definition. Got it. And grammatically, you're saying this structure is fixed.
It really is. Non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Short here is a predicate adjective. And that little word for, the preposition, is mandatory. It's what links that adjective back to the full noun phrase, the original identity.
Right.
If you drop the for, the sentence just breaks grammatically. Liz is short Elizabeth. Makes no sense.
No.
You need that for to create the linkage. It confirms the abbreviation exists in place of the full term. Equivalence through abbreviation.
Okay, let's talk about the social side then, because that's often what learners are really grappling with, right? Using it naturally. When we talk about names like Reggie is short for Reginald, it feels like a social translation, bridging formal and informal.
It is, yeah. It's an act of clarification, often social clarification. You use it when you sense the person you're talking to might not know your preferred shorter name or nickname. It just immediately establishes clarity and honestly a bit of authority. Like, this is my name, this is the short version I use. It cuts through any potential awkwardness.
Okay. But it works just as well for technical stuff, right? Where maybe the stakes for clarity are even higher, like in a formal report or something.
Absolutely. Think about technical documents or corporate communications. If you introduce an acronym like, say, AI or an initialism, clarity is absolutely paramount.
Right.
You have to establish that identity first. You'd write or say, the document refers to AI, which is short for artificial intelligence. Using short for there signals something important. It signals to the reader or listener that this abbreviation, AI, is now the official, contextually correct term for the rest of this discussion or document, and they should mentally substitute the full meaning whenever they see the short form.
Okay, that makes sense. It sets the stage. Now, this brings up something learners often ask about. The difference between acronyms, like NATO, that you pronounce as a word, and initialisms, like AI or FBI, where you say the letters. Does short for work for both?
Yes, absolutely. It applies equally to both. It doesn't matter how you pronounce the shortened form. An initialism, like AI, pronounced AI, and an acronym like NATO, pronounced as one word. They're both just shortened versions of a longer name or phrase. Short for handles them identically because its function isn't about pronunciation, it's about clarifying the origin of the term.
So learners shouldn't hesitate. Use it for both.
Definitely. Feel confident using short for either type.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate again for the learner. I'm writing a memo. I'm worried about being too wordy. Why can't I just say, AI is the short version of artificial intelligence? Seems clear enough.
Well, yes, a native speaker would probably understand you, but
Uh-huh.
it sounds a bit clunky, a little redundant, maybe.
How so?
The phrase short for is this incredibly tight, efficient linguistic package. It signals immediately and concisely, okay, I'm performing an abbreviation clarification now, using a longer phrase like, is the short version of just. It dilutes that efficiency. It draws unnecessary attention to the act of shortening rather than just giving the essential information.
Oh, okay. So short for is like a shortcut itself.
Exactly. It's a shortcut to sounding natural and precise when you're identifying terms. You avoid awkward phrasing.
So whether you're dealing with technical clarity in a report or just social clarity meeting someone new, short for something is the specific tool you need. It establishes that derived identity cleanly, confidently.
It really does. It's about showing linguistic confidence straight away, showing you grasp how abbreviations work logically in English.
Moving on then. This next one, I think, is where things get really, really interesting linguistically. We're talking about a phrase where the words seem to transform into something much bigger than their parts. Know-how. We're shifting gear here, right? Moving beyond just knowing facts.
Yeah, absolutely. We're moving into the realm of specialized skill, practical expertise, often quite intangible stuff. And this phrase allows us to treat that skill almost like a commodity.
A commodity. How so?
Well, this section really analyzes that fundamental difference between, say, declarative knowledge and just knowing facts and procedural knowledge, knowing how to do things, knowing processes.
Right. Knowing that versus knowing how.
Precisely. And the phrase know-how, or sometimes written know-how, allows us to bridge that gap. It lets us talk about procedural knowledge, that practical skill, as if it's a quantifiable asset, something you can have or buy or sell.
Okay, let's start with the grammar again, because you mentioned the form changes things. There's the verbal phrase and then this noun form.
Exactly. The verbal construction is pretty straightforward, right? I know how to do something.
Like, I know how to ride a bike.
Perfect example. I know how to bake sourdough bread. It's a verb phrase describing a personal capability. You're showing proficiency in an action.
Got it.
But the noun form, know-how, you often see it hyphenated. Sometimes it's just one word. Know-how, that's where the real complexity and maybe the power lies.
Okay.
When you use know-how as a noun, it means accumulated expertise, often proprietary expertise, like a company secret. It's like you can't literally put skill in a jar on a shelf, right?
Right.
But this noun form lets us talk about it as if it were a tangible asset.
So when we use it as a noun, we're essentially treating practical skill like intellectual property, something that has value, can be traded, acquired.
Precisely. And that implication of deep experience is absolutely vital. Know-how implies knowledge you didn't just get from a book. It's gained through practice, usually extensive practice, mastery, probably some trial and error along the way. It's not just following steps 1, 2, 3.
It's more than the instructions.
Much more. It's the ability to handle the unexpected things that pop up, to troubleshoot when step 3 doesn't work as planned, to achieve the best possible result even when the conditions aren't perfect.
Okay, let's apply that. Think about a business context. Why would a big company pay, millions for a smaller tech firm just to get its team?
Right. They're often paying primarily for the collective know-how of that team.
Or not just the patents or the code.
Well, they might be acquiring the patents or the code too, but that data, that IP, might be almost useless without the human capital, the people who actually know how to interpret it, develop it, apply it effectively. Think about maybe a specialized manufacturing company. They might say something like, our competitive edge, it lies in the proprietary know-how of our senior engineers when it comes to material stress tolerance.
Right.
That know-how, it's their secret sauce. It's the skill base they've built up over decades, maybe, and it can't just be easily copied by someone reading a manual.
So it's the difference between knowing, say, that a particular chemical reaction should happen and having the actual know-how to scale that reaction up safely and cost-effectively in a huge industrial plant.
That's a perfect contrast. The second part involves so much more. Risk management, safety protocols, fine-tuning based on experience.
Little adjustments you only learn by doing.
Exactly. Or think about IT. You might know what all the error codes mean. That's declarative knowledge, facts.
Okay.
But if you don't have the actual know-how to navigate the deep system architecture, find the root cause, and fix the conflict without accidentally creating 5 new problems.
Yeah, that's happened to me.
Right. Your factual knowledge isn't enough for the task. The know-how is the ability to execute the solution efficiently and reliably.
What's really fascinating here, then, is how this noun form lets English speakers almost quantify this practical skill, treat it like a thing, an asset that can be packaged up or transferred.
It allows us to discuss skill in the abstract, yes. And critically for you, the learner, when you hear know-how used as a noun, you should immediately recognize the speaker is talking about mastery, real mastery earned through experience.
Not just book learning.
Definitely not just book learning. It carries a kind of gravitas, a weight, that the word skill alone sometimes lacks.
But wait, what about situations where someone claims they know how to do something, but, well, they clearly don't have the proficiency? Is the phrase ever used maybe sarcastically or to point out a lack of skill?
Oh, absolutely. Often. This is where the social context really kicks in.
Okay.
Imagine a young apprentice confidently saying, yeah, I know how to fix that really complex machine. A seasoned master technician might listen, watch them struggle, and then say, maybe gently, maybe not so gently, look, you know the steps, but you lack the know-how.
Ah, okay. Drawing a clear line.
Exactly. That exchange reinforces the definition. The master is distinguishing between knowing the theory, the steps on paper, and having that reliable, proven mastery that comes from doing it hundreds of times.
So the phrase is also a tool for assessment, for challenging competence.
A very valuable one, yes. It's like a benchmark for that internalized procedural knowledge.
It really does elevate the whole concept of expertise, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You're not just saying you have skills, you're saying you have this proven, internalized capability to actually get the job done right.
Absolutely. It's often that intangible factor that makes the difference between success and failure. And yeah, English speakers often treat it like gold.
Okay, let's move into our third area. This one deals with the sometimes subtle but really crucial mechanics of reported speech. How we introduce what someone else said, and importantly, how we designate who they said it to. We're zooming in on say that versus say to. Just adding that little preposition to seems to shift the meaning quite dramatically.
It does. This is all about direction versus content. And to really get a grip on this distinction, we probably need to get slightly technical for a moment.
Okay.
We need to look at the verb say itself, and especially how it compares to the verb tell.
Ah, okay. Say versus tell. That's a classic point of confusion for learners.
It really is.
Yeah.
So let's lay down that technical groundwork first. Why do we sometimes need say to when often, maybe even usually, tell seems like the easier option?
Right. Tell feels more direct.
It comes down to grammar specifically, transitivity, and what objects these verbs require.
Okay, transitivity.
So the verb say is often used intransitively, like, he didn't say anything. Or it takes a direct object, which is usually the words that were spoken. He said hello.
Right.
But crucially, say generally cannot take the recipient of the message directly as an object. You can't say, he said me hello.
No, that sounds wrong.
Exactly. If you want to include the recipient with the verb say, you absolutely must use the preposition to. Hence, I said something to him, or he said hello to me.
Okay, the to is mandatory for the recipient with say.
Mandatory. Now, contract that with tell. Tell is what we call a detransitive verb.
Ditransitive meaning to.
2 objects, yes. It automatically takes 2 objects. An indirect object, that's the recipient, and a direct object, that's the content, the message. So you just say, I told him the news, or he told me his name.
Ah, no to needed.
No to needed. And that efficiency, that directness of tell, is why it tends to dominate in casual, everyday conversation. It's quicker.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So if tell is generally more efficient, when and why do we choose to use say to? What's the effect?
Good question. When say to is chosen, it often signals something specific. It might introduce a bit more formality or precision or maybe even a slight distance.
Formality. How so?
It often shows up in more structured communication contexts. Places where the precise transmission of a message to a specific recipient needs to be documented or at least emphasized.
Can you give us an example? A scenario where that precision matters?
Sure. Imagine maybe a legal setting or some high-stakes negotiation you might hear. The lawyer advised the client to remain silent. Now, what exactly did the prosecutor say to the witness?
Okay.
Using say to there emphasizes the directed nature of that communication. It isolates that specific communication channel prosecutor to witness. It feels a bit less personal, maybe more procedural than asking, what did the prosecutor tell the witness?
Right. Tell might imply more of a back and forth, a conversation.
Possibly, yeah. Or just a more casual relaying of information. Say to frames it more like a formal address, a specific statement directed at one person.
That sense of formality, or maybe deliberation, makes sense. It focuses you on the specific path the message took.
Exactly. Now, let's pivot to the other side. Say that. This construction does something different. It shifts the emphasis away from the recipient entirely.
And focuses purely on the content.
Purely on the content of what was said. We use say that constantly, right? When we're reporting speech or maybe confirming something we heard or even challenging it, that word that acts like a connector, introducing the clause that contains the content.
Okay, so say that equals content focus.
Precisely. When you use say that, the current speaker, you, is kind of distancing themselves from the original act of speaking. The focus isn't on who said it to whom, but on the substance, the veracity, or the implications, or maybe just the sheer impact of the content itself.
Okay, let's look at some practical examples for say that. Maybe first, just simple reporting.
Sure. If you're reporting back after a meeting, you might say, okay, the committee said that they approved the budget increase.
Right, the main point is the approval, the content.
Yeah.
You're not really concerned about who exactly they said it to in that moment.
Exactly. The recipient is irrelevant to the report. And the second major use. Often it's about astonishment or needing clarification.
Ah, yeah, like when you hear something shocking.
Definitely. You need to verify the content you think you just heard.
Wait a second. Did you just say that the flight was delayed by 8 hours?
Right. The focus is entirely on the shocking content, 8 hours.
Totally. If you had used say to there, it would sound really weird. Wait, did you just say to me that the flight was delayed? It shifts the emphasis onto you as the recipient, which isn't the point at all if the shocking thing is the delay itself.
Okay, that distinction is crystal clear. Now, this raises that question you touched on earlier. How does choosing say to over the more common tell subtly shift the tone towards? You said greater distance or formality.
Yeah, I think it creates a slight cognitive speed bump, maybe?
A speed bump.
Well, tell is so streamlined, so efficient, it kind of fosters rapport, makes the exchange feel quick and direct. Say to, because you have to consciously insert that preposition to, makes the communication feel a bit more deliberate, more measured. Okay.
And that deliberateness naturally lends itself to environments that are more controlled, more formal, or, yeah, just a bit more distant.
So mastering this isn't just about grammar, it's about controlling the relationship dynamic.
I think so, yeah. You can choose casual rapport with tell, or more precise, perhaps formal reporting with say to, gives the learner another tool to manage tone.
Okay, we've arrived at our final phrase for this deep dive. And this one, wow, this one is perhaps the most sensitive to context because its two main meanings have vastly different consequences.
Oh, absolutely.
We're dissecting let someone go. Depending entirely on the situation, this phrase could be completely benign, totally harmless. Yeah. Or it could be utterly devastating news.
It's a perfect case study in euphemism, isn't it?
It really is.
We absolutely have to explore both sides. Its primary literal meaning of physical release, and then its incredibly powerful yet often quite opaque secondary meaning, employment termination. Getting fired.
Right. Let's cover the primary meaning quickly first, because that one's pretty straightforward, pretty literal.
It is, yeah. The literal physical use is about permission to leave, or maybe ceasing to hold on to something or someone.
Like letting go of a rope.
Exactly. Or if you're physically holding something back, you let it go. A parent might let their child go to a party, meaning give permission. The focus is on allowing freedom, allowing movement, stopping restraint.
And the meaning is usually really clear from the physical context.
Immediately clear. You know, even in an office, you might say, oh, hang on, I need to let the courier go. They've got another delivery. Totally normal, literal meaning.
Okay.
You know.
Straightforward enough. Now, let's shift gears completely into the corporate world, the world of HR, where this phrase has taken on its most significant and, frankly, often most painful meaning. We had to let him go. Everyone knows that means he was fired, dismissed, laid off. Why? Why did the business world land on this specific phrase as the go-to euphemism?
It's really all about accountability, I think, and, well, it's softening the blow, or at least appearing to soften the blow.
Right.
Let someone go is the standard HR-approved phrasing precisely because it avoids the direct, often perceived as aggressive, verbs like fire or dismiss.
Those sound harsh. Active.
They do. Firing someone implies a very active choice, a direct action taken by the employer, holding the employer responsible. The company fired John. It puts the agency squarely on the company.
Okay, so how does let go change that?
When you switch to let someone go, you subtly but powerfully shift the perceived agency. The phrasing implies that the company isn't actively doing something to the person, but rather merely allowing them to depart.
Allowing them, like it wasn't the company's choice.
Exactly. It often frames the departure as being driven by external, maybe unavoidable circumstances, things like budget cuts, unnecessary restructuring, shifts in the market, houses beyond the manager's immediate control.
So the employer becomes almost a passive actor, responding to necessity, rather than being the active agent initiating the termination.
That's the effect, yes. It's a kind of linguistic buffering. It provides the employer, or the manager delivering the news, with a degree of plausible deniability regarding, perhaps, malice or even direct responsibility. It frames the event as this regrettable, almost administrative necessity.
Rather than a targeted dismissal based on performance or something similar.
Right. Even if performance was the issue, the language itself softens that judgment.
This type of language, does it have a name?
Yeah, linguists often categorize this sort of thing as avoidance language. It fits right alongside other common corporate euphemisms we hear all the time,
Like what?
like talking about right-sizing or downsizing, instead of just saying mass layoffs or firing lots of people,
Yeah.
or talking about positions being made redundant instead of just saying eliminated.
That comparison is really helpful. So
Right.
why let go instead of, say, right-sizing? They both seem like euphemisms.
They are, but they work slightly differently. Right-sizing or restructuring still keeps the focus on the company's action, the structural changes it is making. Let go, on the other hand, shifts the focus onto the person who is leaving, the one being released.
Interesting.
And it's particularly powerful, I think, because the phrase carries this lingering positive connotation of release or freedom from its original literal meaning.
Even though the context, getting fired, is the complete opposite of freedom.
Exactly. That subtle, underlying positive association, even though logically negated by the situation, just makes it sound inherently less hostile, less aggressive than fire.
Okay, let's really cement this for the learner in that corporate context. How would this typically sound in a meeting or an announcement?
You'd hear something like, unfortunately, due to unforeseen market shifts, the sales department had to let 3 regional managers go this quarter.
Okay, listen to that structure.
Notice how the external force, unforeseen market shifts, is almost presented as the cause. And the company's action is softened by that phrase, had to, implying lack of choice. The whole sentence structure subtly reinforces this narrative of unfortunate necessity rather than direct active choice.
So the key takeaway for the learner is, in any professional setting, any discussion about employment status, hearing let go almost certainly means termination. No ambiguity there.
Zero ambiguity in that context. It's a code.
And the power of context is just everything.
Yeah.
You absolutely have to distinguish between your boss telling you, hey, please let go of that jammed lever.
But they don't have to let you go.
Right. One is a simple physical instruction. The other is potentially life-altering news.
Absolutely. And if we zoom out, connect this to the bigger picture. It's a fascinating example of how sophisticated English can be, how it deploys existing phrases to meet new, often socially sensitive needs.
Language evolving to smooth things over.
To smooth things over, yeah. To protect feelings, maybe preserve a sense of professional dignity, and sometimes, let's be honest, to shield management from the full weight of direct accountability.
And what's really interesting is that this euphemism is so widely understood and accepted now. Both sides usually know exactly what's meant, which makes it, in its own way, a very efficient, if sometimes frustrating, form of corporate speak.
It really is. It's become part of the sort of professional social contract, hasn't it? Hashtag, tag, outro.
Wow. Okay, that has been a really rigorous deep dive into these tiny structural tools that actually hold up so much of fluent natural English. We've taken 4 phrases that look simple on the surface
Hmm.
and really uncovered the significant structural machinery and the social weight they carry.
Yeah, we really have. We've seen how short for something isn't just about definition, it's about providing that precise identity linkage, connecting the informal to the formal or the abbreviation back to its full original term.
Right. And then we analyzed know-how, seeing how it elevates practical procedural skill, transforming it almost into this quantifiable asset that companies value in trade. Real expertise.
Then we dissected say to versus say that, grounding that distinction in the grammar, in transitivity, showing how that little word to really dictates the focus recipient versus content and subtly controls formality.
And finally, let someone go. Unpacking how it functions as this crucial corporate euphemism, deftly navigating the harshness of termination by, well, playing with agency and borrowing from its literal meaning.
It really shows how knowledge is most valuable when you understand it precisely and can apply it correctly. These phrases, they're like small, very sharp tools in your communication toolkit.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you, the listener, understand the mechanisms underneath, I really hope you'll start actively listening for them in daily life. Notice the context, hear the tone, see how native speakers deploy them strategically.
It changes how you hear things, doesn't it?
It really does. That continuous listening and application, that's the real key to fluency.
Absolutely. And just to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We've talked a lot about how letting someone go softens professional termination, using that passive agency idea. Now, think about personal relationships.
Okay.
What common phrase or phrases do we often use in English that softens the blow, similarly, when ending a romantic relationship? And how does that language compare linguistically to let someone go? Particularly, think about who takes responsibility or avoids it in the phrasing we choose.
Oh, that's a great question. The language we use around any kind of separation, whether it's corporate or deeply personal, yeah, it always reveals where we're trying to place or maybe deflect responsibility.
Something to think about. That is it for this deep dive. Go out
Uh-huh.
there and communicate precisely, really understanding the structural weight and the nuance of every phrase you use.
We'll catch you on the next one.